Hello and welcome to the Mystic Cast, where you join Jack Stafford and Deborah Littleboy, members of the Aetherius Society, the cosmic religion for the Aquarian Age, as we break down the barriers between religion, science, metaphysics, philosophy, and mysticism, all of which are really only aspects of the selfsame quest for truth. Please note, this is an independent program, not produced or fact-checked by the Aetherius Society. Today, our guest is Wayne Purden. Hello, Wayne. How are you doing?
Hello, Jack. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Where are you in the world?
I'm in Safford, Arizona, which is about 150 miles south of Phoenix and 100 miles east of Tucson.
And how's the weather today?
It's a sunny day. It's sunny most of the time. It rained yesterday.
You had a part to
We're
play
in
in
the
that?
monsoon season right now, so we're having lots of rain.
Okay, so you have minimum work to do.
Right.
Because today we're talking about the weather and how to control it. And you've got some amazing stories. We're going to hear some of your stories. We're going to share some of our masters, Dr. King. But maybe you could tell us, how you started on this path.
Well, I studied meditation many years ago, and I became interested in an offshoot of Theosophy, Summit Lighthouse. I was with them for several years. Then I became a member of another offshoot, the Heart Center. And I am not surprised that my beliefs and knowledge are very similar to Dr. King's, because in his lectures he mentions Theosophy, theosophical leaders and teachers. And I was wondering if the Aetherius Society is an offshoot of Theosophy, if he was originally a Theosophist.
No, the Ascended Masters, they looked at all established, the Cosmic Masters looked at all established religions before they decided to form the Aetherius Society. And they realized that to get through what they wanted to do, they would mean completely changing the existing organization. So for Theosophy, because Theosophy was formed by the Ascended Masters, and the Aetherius Society was brought into being by the Cosmic Masters. So it's a new teaching for the Aquarian Age. So it's it fits perfectly together with Theosophy. It dovetails because it's the next generation, shall we say?
Okay.
And there was particularly what George Hodgson, isn't it, Deborah? You were particularly interested, the famous Theosophist.
Then yeah, love his work. You would obviously know his work, Wayne.
Yeah, I've
I
read
just,
some books.
just adore the way that he describes what he saw, and the way that he got an artist to picturize it. Because I don't see. I feel the nature energies, but I don't see them. And so to know what my feeling looks like, if that's making any sort of sense to you, it's a real good connection for me. So I spend a long time going through the kingdom of the gods. Kingdom of the Gods.
Right. I haven't read that. Did he write The Lost Light? I've read that.
I don't know whether he wrote that or not. I know that he did the Fairy Kingdom. And as I say, the Kingdom of the Gods is his biggest work that I'm aware of, which is like the overshadowing Devic kingdom, which I think you call the gods and goddesses, if I'm getting the terminology to your way. So yeah, the overreaching, the overshadowing big governors.
Devas.
The big governors, and how they look and how they vibrate, just fascinating. So anyway, it's not about me, it's all about
I'll
you.
have to get that book.
Are you able to see the Devas then, Wayne? visual contact, or how do you experience them?
With the elementals, the nature spirits.
Uh-huh.
Well, many years ago, when I was like 22 or 23, I had a small greenhouse. I was growing tomato plants, and at the time, I read a book, another interesting book by Franklin Lower called "The Power of Prayer on Plants," and he recommended praying for the plants and talking lovingly toward them. And I think I read elsewhere to play classical music for them to help them grow. So I was doing that. I talked lovingly to them while I watered them. And when I left the greenhouse, I turned on the classical music radio station. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was establishing a relationship with the tomato Devas. And one night I was at work. I worked in a wire factory as a welder. And most of the time I just sat and waited for the copper coil to go through the extruding machine. So I had a lot of free time to daydream or read. So I was just sitting there daydreaming, and all of a sudden I had a vision of a hand moving into my field of vision, and I saw a tomato plant, and the hand knocked over the tomato plant. And this was just like a second or two, very quick vision. So when I got home that night, I went into the greenhouse, and the radio was missing. And on the ground was one of my tomato plants. So the thief who stole my radio apparently knocked over one of the tomato plants, and the tomato Deva I had a relationship with through prayer and talking, sent me an image, communicated me. And that's one thing I was listening to Dr. King's lecture on the David Kingdom, or it might have been on the three forms of magic. And he said that they communicate with images. So when I read that yesterday, or listened to that yesterday, I realized that the tomato David was crying out to me for help to save it from the evil thief.
Wow. So this was back in the early days then. So you've developed
So
since
that
then.
was
That was your beginning.
my first and only experience with receiving a communication from the nature spirits. But I have had communication from the higher spirits, the gods and goddesses, ascended masters, and probably cosmic masters.
So how does the communication? Are you clairaudient or clair?
It's
Voice?
clairaudience. At times, it's like intuition or inspiration. I receive a thought, and either I start speaking it or I start writing it, and it just flows automatically without any effort. And I have to first get into a receptive state through prayer, meditation, prayer, singing, and gazing at a sacred image or icon. Those are the four main things to put myself in a receptive state so that I can receive a message from a higher vibrational being.
That chimes with what I've heard from a lot of people, that you have to get in tune to be at the vibration of the person who is, or the being who is trying to communicate with you, which makes sense.
And most of the time, I don't know in advance who's going to come through. A few times I asked a specific deity or master to communicate with me, and that works.
And you mentioned using, you said yagyas, homas, and japa, used by the
Uh-huh.
Vedas, the Vedic pundits, to maintain harmony in nature. So do you also use those techniques?
Yeah, I first started it a little over a year ago, July 3rd of 22. It was very dry here. We were in a drought, and we had a huge pile of brush and wood that needed to be burned in our fields. Half of our property is an open field. So in the middle of it, we had this huge pile. So I got a burn permit to burn it. And I told my wife, let's try doing a yagya to Varuna to end the drought. So we lit the pyre, the pile of wood, and started reciting a specific mantra to Varuna. And we did that about an hour or so. And when we started, the sky had a few white clouds. By the time, after a few hours, the sky was full of gray clouds and it started sprinkling. Not enough to put the fire out, but we had to use a hose to put the fire out.
No, that's
But
wonderful.
after that day, throughout the rest of July, August, September, and October, it rained like every 2 or 3 days. We had a thunderstorm. And by the fall, the drought was over. And I went on the website and I found a couple of maps that showed the rainfall and the drought. One map showed that in the area around our home, the rainfall was like 3 to 6 inches above normal. And on the drought map, there was a white area, like 50 miles around our house, that was drought free. And the rest of the state the drought was improving. So that was pretty amazing.
Yes.
And so we tried it again this year.
And do you think, how do you think it works with the, because from what I understand, and maybe Deborah could help me out with this, is that you have to give the devas a certain amount of energy. They can only work with our energy. And I'm just thinking of the story from Dr. King about calling in the storm diva. There was a huge storm in London in the
Yeah, I listened to that. That was an amazing experience.
So he called the diva into his presence and gave him the energy he needed. And I mean, to meet a storm diva face to face is I can't imagine what that's like.
Yeah, I think he said he had to do something or die.
Yeah,
so that was
Yeah, it has to be in a certain ritual. And if it's not done exactly according to law, then, well, it's exactly as you give the instructions. So if you make a mistake with the instructions, you've made a mistake, and that could be you dying.
So be careful, Wayne.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know with the yagas and the homas, it's very prescribed. Every word, every movement, and I suppose I was kind of taking a risk by doing a yaga that wasn't prescribed like the Vedic pundits do. But I think what saved me was my intent. It was a selfless intent to help the farmers in Arizona to recover from the drought. And I think that love, that selfless service was more important than following any prescribed ritual.
Well, love is an energy, and you give so many units of energy. The devas use that energy, so by law they need a certain amount of energy to carry out the action that you've asked for. And if you don't give them enough energy, they have to take your life. So it's in that aspect. I don't know if it's about following exactly the. You mentioned white, black, and grey magic, how that influences the devas. Maybe that's something you could expand on.
Yeah, again, with magic, the intent is important. With white magic, you have a loving, selfless intent to benefit nature or humanity. With black magic, it's very hateful, selfish intent. And with gray magic, it's pretty much unintentional. It's just you have negative thoughts and feelings, and most of the time they come back to hurt you. But if it's powerful enough, if there's enough people having those same negative thoughts and feelings, then you could have an effect on the environment, on the David kingdom, cause violent storms.
Well, Dr. King was asked for his definition of magic, and he said all thoughts and actions.
Yeah, we're all magicians.
Yeah,
whether we realize it or not.
Hopefully, we're weaving a wonderful, positive spell of light during this conversation.
I believe anyone can be a white magician. You just have to know what to think and feel, and be aware of your thoughts, feelings, and actions. Like Omram Mikhail Ivanhoff also said that we're all magicians. That even a certain look we give somebody, or a gesture, like pointing a finger, these are all magic gestures that have power, that can influence people. So we have to be aware of our facial expressions and our gestures, and as well as our words and thoughts and feelings.
I'm glad you mentioned him. He has some amazing experience as well with controlling the devas to influence the weather. And how have you come across him, and what part of his teaching influenced you?
Yeah, I came across him in 2005 when I found his book, Toward a Solar Civilization, in a bookstore. And I have this complete library, hundreds of books, and the Prosveta is the publisher. Yeah. If you want to interview a student of his, get a hold of somebody at Prosveta. They'll recommend somebody who's a good authority on him.
Oh, excellent. Well, maybe we could check that out afterwards, get in touch with some details.
So I read many of his books. I probably have several more years of reading before I finish reading them all. But he was a very enlightened master, very, very high master. He was in touch with the Devas, and his autobiography by Louise Marie Frenette, she relates a story of a time when a forest fire threatened his community, the Bonfin, in southern France. And he went to the front of the fire and prayed to the elementals. He probably did some other sort of magic rituals, because he told the people with him to leave him alone so that he could pray to the elementals. I'm not sure what he did, but the people that Louise Marie interviewed about this incident say that within minutes, in a completely cloudless sky, rain clouds gathered, and within minutes, the rain poured down and put out the forest fire that was threatening the community. And it's hard to believe, but I tend to believe it because I had a similar experience in 1988 with one of the Yellowstone fires. During that summer, there were 45 forest fires in Yellowstone Park and in the area around the park. And at the time, I was living at a spiritual community that bordered Yellowstone Park. And one of the fires was threatening to encroach on our property. So about 150 of us, 3 busloads, went to this meadow that was close to the fire. And we started praying intensely to the elementals, specifically to the sylphs, to turn the wind so that the fire wasn't blowing toward our property. And while we were praying, a couple of dozen firefighters retreated from the fire. They were giving up because they couldn't contain it. It was too wild. So they stopped and told us, look, you people need to get out of here, because if once that fire reaches the top of the ridge and the wind is blowing toward you, that fire could be down on you in a matter of minutes, and you won't have time to load the bus and get out of here. So we had a choice to stay and continue praying or to leave. We decided to stay, and I noticed there was a much more intense praying.
That'll do it, eh?
The prayers were a lot more intense.
Yeah.
Our lives were on the line.
Maybe that's what we need in
No
Operation
longer
Prayer
had
Power.
the firemen protecting us.
Deborah, maybe we should introduce that in Operation Prayer Powers, some of those
Well,
imminent fire.
there is a magic in the power of desperation, for sure. That goes right through the gambit, doesn't it? On all sorts of like addiction and what have you. You get this gift of desperation where everything's heightened and really you're going to make it work. So I'm fully accepting that. Can I just step back a little bit with you, Wayne?
Sure.
I was fascinated when you explained that when you looked at the drought map and you saw, and I think I remember you said 50-mile radius around your property, there was X amount extra rain, and everywhere else was pretty much parched. That's my interpretation of it. You could clearly see the boundary line that you had influenced.
I have the 2 maps on my wife's laptop here. So if I can share my screen.
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Please.
Okay. So let me share my screen here. This first one is the rain map. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
So this is the state of Arizona. And we are near this blue circle, which is 6 to 9 inches. We're like between here and the silver green circle. And let me bring up the drought map. You see that most of Arizona is dark green, and blue, which is good. Yellow is 0 to 3 inches below average. So it's pretty much no drought in Arizona. It's all above normal rainfall. And the drought map is this one. And again, we were like in this middle of this white area. The white means no drought.
I didn't hear that change.
Yeah, it's still the same image.
Did it change? I'm sorry, I couldn't see that.
Yeah, the white means no drought, and the brown means there's still some drought. And we were pretty much in the middle here with this hatch area.
I think we still see the first image, but I definitely get what you're saying. Yeah.
So you can't see this image of the drought map?
No, I don't think the image changed, Wayne. I think we're still looking at the first thing you gave us.
Okay, let me X out of that. Can you see the...
We're back to you, yeah.
Can you see that? The drought map?
Not come up yet.
Oh, well, that's strange. Because it's on my desktop and I'm sharing my desktop. Well, anyway,
try sharing again.
I'll try sharing again.
Yeah.
Okay. So, share screen. Okay. Here we go. So you probably see it now, right?
Okay, yeah, that's, yep.
So we're about here.
Uh-huh.
And it's probably more like a 200-mile radius or diameter of the drought-free.
Yeah, it's impressive.
So those two maps really impressed me that our yoga had an effect.
What do you think it's about?
Sorry, Jack. What that brought me to thinking is that, so you'd had this previous experience, you'd used the previous experience of working to divert the fire, to then working with to bring on some rain. So we're doing the two things. When you were working to divert the fire, there was a big crowd of you, and you were like,
150 people.
What needed it to happen, like really this had to happen. Whereas when you were influencing it with you and your wife only, so you had less input and less urgency, but still with just two people and the loving intent, you still managed to influence a 200-mile radius. So, but that makes me think, if there were enough people knowing with this knowledge that you have, that we could actually make perfect conditions. And Dr. King gave us an example of that in one of his lectures. He said something along the lines of, if we all knew how we could work with the Devas, then the orange groves in California you'd never have to water them, because they get exactly the amount of water that they would need to the half ounce. Because the Devic kingdom know exactly what they need to do, but they have to have the energy to use. And I think what you have cemented in me is that, not that I ever doubted the word of Dr. King, I never did, but it's nice to have it come from other sources. It's so it's almost, and I'm not putting you down either, but it almost makes me feel, hey, do you know what? Every time I go out and I speak to my plants and I say how beautiful you are, I actually am doing the right thing.
Right. You're establishing a relationship.
So I thank you for that. It's happening. Yeah. Sorry, Jack, your show.
No, just go on, Wayne.
Can I talk about what Deborah?
Yeah, please do.
I think the key is not so much having a lot of people and having a lot of intense prayers, but it's establishing a relationship. There's a loving relationship with the Devas. Because I think most of the people were just reciting prayers rotely, and the emotion was mostly fear, not love. So that's why it took a lot of us to turn the wind 180 degrees so that it blew the fire away. And that was one of the few fires that was contained during that summer of fires. But Om Ram was able to not only, he didn't just change the wind, he had the sylphs bring clouds, rain clouds, and cause a downpour to put out the fire. And he did it by himself because he had a very loving relationship with Devas. And I think that's the key. Love is the key, and having a relationship, giving them that love energy can work magic, white magic.
I wonder if that, Jack, I wonder if that fits in with what the Master of Sirius is always telling us with our practices, that we have to get the best results, we have to be regular with good cheer. And so that whole energy and so we're told with all of our practices that has to be regular. There's no point in doing 2 hours one day and 5 minutes the next. No, regular, consistent, but always with good cheer. And we're taught as well that if you just smile, the actual the muscles in your face make you feel, and it does. I mean, I'm just talking about that. It's made me lift my energy level. If only people would know that this robot that we walk around in, how to use it, harmony with the mother, with the Mother Earth, we would live in such a beautiful. Well, we live in a beautiful world, but we would live in harmony with the beautiful world. Yeah.
Cheer, not fear. That's good.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to ask.
Not dampen them down.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. Is how you do this, and I think you've both answered the question that it's this regularity and building it. Like it's like anything, anything in a normal business relationship, working life. It's about regularity, isn't it? Building up relationships and contacts, and so why should it be any different when you're working with the nature spirits?
Right. You don't ask an acquaintance to do you a favor. You ask a good friend. You have a relationship.
Yeah.
When you build up that trust, and you feel comfortable enough to be able to ask without feeling a burden. That's a big thing. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? How straightforward life is, how simple life is. But not easy, because we're conditioned get out of it, if you want, or many people are just unaware and would sloth.
Dr. King, I remember one time he was coming down off a holy mountain, and all the nature spirits started talking to him and complaining about the farmers, because they've abused their relationship, and so you can understand how the nature spirits are distrustful of us. Have you heard complaints as well, Wayne, in your?
Well, I listened to Dr. King talk about that in one of his lectures, but I also listened to him say that that they love it when we give them energy, and the Master Om Ram also said that when we establish a relationship with them, we acknowledge them with gratitude and love, that they just crowd around us, and they're just so joyful because we're paying them attention. In some of them, Om Ram said that gnomes, if they take a liking to us, can lead us to gold or gemstones. And his master, Peter Dunoff, he was hiking, Om Ram was hiking with him in the Rila Mountains one day, and Peter Dunoff pointed to a spot on the mountain and said, "Did you know there's buried treasure there?" And Om Ram didn't even look at where the spot was because he considered his master a greater treasure than any gold or gemstones. But the Master Dunov knew that the treasure was there because the elementals told him. He had that same relationship with the elementals. And that relationship with a master guru is also more precious than anything.
I think they mention in a lot of the Indian, is it an autobiography of a yogi, Deborah, that they also mention, people can materialize things and when they're in contact with the elementals.
Yeah, I'm sure that was in there. But the thing that's just come to me, going again backtracking, is that we're told that on the higher realms, on the other planets, that students would not disrespect their master even by a glance. And of course, that is exactly what you were saying about, even a pointing of a finger or a raised eyebrow one. And that just fits again so perfectly in with what we've been told, like right the way through the line, through the gambit, that the more we understand, the more reverence and respect we have, which again is the raising of the vibrations and opening of the heart center, which actually then balances this whole sense of lack that we have on this, like it's all mine and frightened to give it away and frightened of this and frightened of all the rest of the things. Whereas by knowing if you're following somebody and you wouldn't even think about disrespecting even by a raised eyebrow, or as you just said, Omar, not even looking to see, because if the master has said it, then that's exactly what it is. And that's wonderful to have that amount of trust and to be able to follow in that path in certainty that you're doing the right thing. Yeah. Very, very interesting.
Jack, regarding your comment on precipitating gold, I had an interesting experience with the goddess Lakshmi, or Mahalakshmi. One night I was working a graveyard shift from like 11 to 7 in the morning. And so it was this menial work, cleaning. And I decided to recite the Mahalakshmi mantra, Om Shri Mahalakshmi Swaha. And I recited that probably 3,000 times in about 6 hours. And while I was reciting it, I visualized the goddess Lakshmi just showering me with gold coins. And I expressed a lot of love while I was doing this, while I was visualizing and reciting mantra. And so I was very energized when I finished my shift, and I went home with my wife. This was during the winter. My wife said, "You need to shovel the snow and ice off our front walk before someone slips and falls." So I was very joyful and agreeable, and I said, "Sure, I'll do it." So I started shoveling, and after a few minutes, I saw something shiny buried in the ice, and I dug it out, and there was a gold ring. I don't know if you can see it.
Wow.
The camera on me.
A big old gold ring as well. A right chunky one.
So I put an ad in the newspaper, lost and found. Nobody claimed it. So I claimed it as a gift from the goddess Lakshmi.
You mentioned also in your email about seeing the Devas through an open third eye. Have you have you had these visual experiences as well?
Only a few times. One time I was in the abode of the Devi, called Devi Loka, and it was interesting because my soul was sort of attached to my higher self. I could see my higher self as like a radiant being, and I was just tagging along, and my higher self was like flying through the air through this corridor, and I could see a door at the end of the corridor, and he wasn't slowing down. So we just went right through the door into another corridor and in a third one. Finally, we entered this huge like cavern or huge temple. And at the far end, there was like a double door, and attendants opened the double door, and in comes the goddess Durga riding her lion, like you see in a lot of Hindu art. Only the lion wasn't walking on the ground, but they were both floating in a golden aura. And so they floated up to like the throne. There was a huge throne. They were above the throne, and Durga was flashing her weapons. She had 8 arms with a weapon in each, and so some of them were flashing like lightning. It was a very awe-inspiring sight, and I just bowed down, and then I came out of the vision. This was while I was in bed at night, and the state I was in, it's sort of like a lucid dream, but it's more than just a lucid dream, because I'm totally conscious. I was aware of my higher self, May, and the colors were very vibrant, very scintillating, very ethereal vision, more lucid than a lucid dream.
What do you think the message was, Wayne? What did you take from that? Because nothing's for nothing, is it? We always show these things for a reason.
I'm not sure about that experience, but I had another experience with the goddess Lakshmi, who showed me a vision. Was sort of like a replay of a video of an incident in my past life, where when I was in India, and people came and took all my possessions from my home. And Lakshmi told me the lesson from that vision of my past life is that she had given me certain powers or cities that I used to accumulate the wealth, but I became too greedy, and my karma for doing that was to lose all my possessions and my home. So she was warning me not to make the same mistake.
Yeah, showing you the pattern.
Not to take her blessing granted.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the Durga's message was. Maybe just to impress me with her majesty, I guess. And it's said that for a goddess to appear to you in a vision is a blessing that It's a very rare blessing. So maybe she was just showing me how much she loved me with this rare blessing.
Yeah.
Would you class her as a diva then? A nature spirit? Or
Do I think Durgan's a nature spirit? I think she's more of a queen of nature spirits. She's a much higher vibration and with much greater power, responsibility. And
do you think many of the people from Greek mythology, the Nordic mythology, the Hindu, are many of these gods from the Devic kingdom?
They could be either evolved from the human kingdom or the Devic kingdom. I think that's a possibility. Some of them could be from the Devic. I know the Varuna is probably from the Devic kingdom. He's the Deva in charge of the oceans and rainfall. That's who he did the yagya to. And I think his counterpart in Greek mythology is Neptune, the god of the oceans and rain. And he's like the king of the undines, or the water elementals.
I help to understand it in the teachings from the Aetheric Society that so when we die, we go to another realm. We have the life between lives. Each chakra is a realm of consciousness, and we go there for a time. We come back here, but between the realms are where the devas live. So at a different frequency of vibration, right here, but just at a different. So they're not visible to us at this our particular frequency, but they're like a comb. No, they fit together perfectly, and they overlap, and they interact with our worlds, and they make our world possible. But they're invisible to us as our lives involved.
They're just like certain rays of light, like ultraviolet, that
right.
They're with us, but we can't see it, like red, green, and orange colors, because they're ultra, but they're beyond our visible spectrum. Right. It's the same with the Devas. They're beyond our visible spectrum.
But they are physical. They exist physically at their realm, but just not
right
us. Yeah.
And the same gods and goddesses. What were you saying?
What you've just mentioned there is that we, in our 12 blessings, the fifth blessing is giving thanks to the thanksgivers, those people that acknowledge the Vedic kingdom. And within that blessing, we're told to mighty Neptune and his hosts, which is exactly what you've just said there. So we, in that fifth blessing, and that's one of our mystical practices that most people in the society will do at least once a day. So we're blessing, and then we're evoking that energy, and we're sending it to a vocal point. And as I say, in the fifth blessing, it is all about the Devic kingdom, the people that give thanks to the Devas, give the energy to the Devas, and the Devas are the mighty Neptune and his hosts. So that it's lovely when you see like the different words explaining exactly the same concept, because it just, I love to see it all tying in, all the similarities all coming together to make one sense, as opposed to you're right, you're wrong, that's not what I think. No, actually, when we explore like this, it becomes so, in my mind, so the evidence is there to be seen. You just have to take a little bit of time to listen and then find out where those connections are. I find it very gratifying. I'm enjoying this immensely. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I appreciate your gratitude, because gratitude is very important, especially when you're dealing with the elementals or the devas and gods and goddesses. Always end your prayer with thank you. And also, I accept it done according to your will. Because if we demand something without giving thanks, that's black magic. White magic always ends with thanks and let it be done according to your will.
Well, I think that's a beautiful note to end on, Wayne. And we've chatted all today about devas, but I'm looking at your blog here and your writings. We can also chat about the sun, the god of the Bible, the Brahma of the Hindu scripts. So I hope you'll come on again in another episode in the future, and we can talk about more of our common interests.
I'd like to talk about sun yoga, sun gazing. I have a lot of amazing experiences with that.
All right, brilliant. Well, we look forward to having you again. Where should people follow you? Where can people read more about you? I know you've written books. How can people stay in touch with you and follow your work?
Just go on Amazon and go to my author page. You can find my books there. And I'm also on Facebook. It's Wayne Purdin, Purdin. And my wife and I used to have a radio show, and you inspired us to start a podcast. So in the next few months, we'll be having the New Earth podcast. We'll be interviewing spiritual adepts. I can interview you, right?
Oh, that'll be great.
Well, brilliant.
Wonderful. Thanks, Wayne, so much.
Thank you for having me.
And if people want to check out the Aetherius Society, it's aetherius.org, AETHRIUS. All right. Thanks, Wayne. See you next time.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.